Welcome to Leadership Matters, a podcast from the Bailey Group. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, president of and partner at the Bailey Group, where we believe better leaders create healthier workplace environments, healthier humans, and a better world. On this show, we explore real stories, practical insights, and honest conversations to help you lead yourself and others better. Thanks for joining us. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Leadership Matters. I'm your host, Kaylee Thomsen, and today I'm really looking forward to this conversation with Dean. Dean, I'm so grateful that you're here. Thanks for taking the time to join us on Leadership Matters.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Dean's work sits at a powerful intersection of leadership, systems, and community impact. Over the course of his career, he's navigated complex environments while staying grounded in the belief that leadership is ultimately about creating the conditions where people and communities thrive. I shared a few reflection prompts with you ahead of time, not as something to prepare perfectly, but simply as a way to arrive centered here, Dean. To start us off, for listeners who may be unfamiliar with you, I'd love for you to share a bit about your background, who you are, and what gets you out of bed in the morning.
So it's a very interesting and what I call a very fulfilling question. What gets me out of bed, and that's various thing outside of being hungry, is the fact that there's a lot of interesting, fascinating projects that's occurring right now that are really starting to shape society. It's not just producing architecture, but starting to influence society in a variety of ways. Part of it is related to East Phillips Neighborhood Institute, which is a roof depot project, is taking a 230,000 square foot building and turning it over to the community so they have their future tied with the building in terms of appreciation of governance and opportunity, especially a group that has never had the access to it in their life, and just watching that unfold. The other part is in the architectural realm of developing, creating new ways of delivering buildings, because we are entering a demographic crisis in which there's less and less of us every year. And with the crackdown on immigration, the labor force is diminishing rapidly in retirements. Finding new ways to produce buildings and modular housing or component construction is very, very critical and necessary, to be blunt, if our industry is going to survive. And the third way is having the opportunity of creating new innovative communities within communities, like the major project I'm about to embark with Brooklyn Center around what used to be the Brookdale Shopping Center, in which we're going to create a whole new urban environment of canals and streets and pedestrian activity and a whole variety of housing topologies and retail that'll really start to create a new standard for Twin Cities. So just those three are great motivation, besides just me being hungry, of getting out of bed in the morning. So there's just, a lot of fascinating activity and projects that's unfolding at this moment.
Incredible. How has that shifted for you over time, Dean, your answer to that question? I'm guessing the food has always been consistent, but there's probably been some evolution over time.
Well, and maybe it comes with age, maybe it comes with experience, but the originally you start business, you're surviving and you sort of grab on anything you get a hold of, because, you got to kill what you eat, you got food thing again, and you got to keep driving to make sure you cover the payroll, keep the business going, all those components, which is essential with business, but that sort of becomes near and dear. With the experience in age, more people are inviting me to the table of new types of projects, the development Brickell Center, the specializing modular house in East Phillips. So it's now becoming that people are saying, Dean, we want your expertise. We want your background. Can you be part of this? Can you help us? Can you guide us? Can you do it, as opposed to just grabbing and digging out and finding whatever you need, or I have to go out and seek it and find it. Now I'm getting invitations of please come join us on this project. Please help us put this together. Please give us guidance on how to go. So that's probably been the biggest transition, that I have a lot more choice, where historically it's like I had to just dig out an opportunity and seize it because of the necessity of survival. So that's been a big improvement and blessing, because the projects are getting a lot more interesting and becoming a lot more influential as this continues. And the trend seems to be accelerating rapidly, of more and more people saying, I want you to be part of my vision, part of my project. Please join me.
Wow. Was there a moment in your career, Dean, where you really started to feel that tide shift, where it was more you going after everything? And I heard you say now you're really feeling um, people coming to you. And I'm curious what you'd attribute that to specifically.
It may be, most business is word of mouth, especially that people just talk to other people. And I think, fortunately, there's probably enough positive word of mouth that they just started calling, that had enough successes in various areas, enough exposure, that people start saying, this is someone that could help you. This is someone that can guide you, especially in the, what I call the minority or cultural communities. That's been tremendous in terms of the cultural communities reaching out to me and say, can you help me with my vision? Can you help me put the project together? Can you guide me there? And that's what's really success. And that's now even bled into the majority community. So I'm going to say in probably in the last 5 years, that has really accelerated and started to blossom, and at the same term really started to diversify my practice, the type of projects that I've involved in.
Yeah. Wow. When you think back on your early years, what moments or environments most shaped the leader you are today?
So probably location, which sounds like an odd answer. The practice originated on 11th and Franklin in Minneapolis. So, which is the Phillips neighborhood, which, as you know, has a lot of demographic and financial challenges in history. So it's the most unlikely location in which to open up an architectural practice, because generally architects would like cluster on the North Loop or other more popular accessible areas. But what happened with that is suddenly I became a neighborhood resource. The firm did, because there was no other architectural firm, no other people like that with that kind of type of background. And so, and more of the neighborhood started to lean on me to help with their causes, help with their issues, to help with their situations and process. And that really shaped the firm it is today, because of that founding within this intense minority cultural community, and the fact that I was able to have success there and help in the community sort of became ingrained in the philosophy of DJR. So DJR is now much known as a community advocate, a firm that really helps out, a firm that's innovative, creative, willing to take chances, and that's established itself. So it's really that genesis of where the office originated from is really what sort of influenced the firm even as of today.
Wow, inspiring. What were your biggest takeaways or biggest lessons learned from those early roots that you were growing in the Phillips neighborhood?
Genius of community. And here's what most people are real blessed to experience this. Most of the time, people look for the genius in the typical places, your boardrooms, your CEO, your country clubs like Interlochen, places like that, where you have the perceived business leaderships and knowledge of my offices, because that's area that we sort of been taught to look towards. But what I discovered being there is that there's a ton of brightness and intelligence and tenacity within this community that was surprising, that wasn't coming from top down, not being driven by people from above, but created out of the community and invented itself. And that became a major influencer of really listening to the community and learning from them because they have great, great attributes. The one aside I want to say the highest loyalty I received was within that community in terms of payment, working with us, and so forth. So it was very unique that I found actually the highest business ethics actually was within the East Phillips neighborhood, within these cultural communities. That was really a major driver on this.
It's really neat. How have you used that insight? I love that term, by the way, genius of community. Can you share a story of how you've used that insight in really powerful ways?
Well, I'll use the example of the East Phillips, since there's more people familiar with it, the Roof Depot project. That this is a venture of the community. They came up with the idea of making this building a major agricultural and hydrocultural resource, meaning indoor farming, indoor fishing, to begin that resource. I was really sort of the corporate hand that guided and gave it structure and direction, but it was really their genius. Now, they came with this 10 years ago before the idea of indoor agriculture or hydroculture became very popular. They actually saw the idea that we could grow food within our community, actually create redundancy of multiple growing areas with direct access of those resources in the community that would all be enriched by it. And this was before COVID. This was before all these other issues. Through COVID, we discovered, gee, redundancy is necessary because a major supply chains broke down. So they understood that this direct access, redundancy, multiple locations was a benefit to the community without realizing that, 7, 8 years after the fact, that now we've learned that this is a necessity if another major issue shows up as a COVID outbreak or any other issues of it. So they foresaw that. And that's one example of their understanding of how to localize business and create greater access and contact to the community and to the producers.
Mm, it's really neat. I'm going to switch gears a little bit here,
Okay.
Dean. Knowing, you've built a successful business, there's a point in most leaders' journey where they move from being sort of the technical expert, the lead architect with all the insights and information and skills and capabilities, to really building out a team to deliver in a consistent, high integrity way on the value proposition of the organization. And I'd be curious to hear from you, what did that transition look like for you?
Built the team almost immediately. So when I graduated out of Harvard, they wanted me to stay out there to be an employee. If there's a professor want to hire me and they say East Coast where it should be, that's immediate belt, so on and so forth. But I wanted to create my own destiny and help create my destiny with others. So I chose to move back to Minneapolis and establish DJR. I immediately found partners I went to school with because I realized I myself can't do it all. I didn't have the knowledge, the areas, the instincts, all this stuff that me alone may survive, but not necessarily succeed. So almost from the start, we started building an organization in which was really reliant on others. I help guide, I may help influence, but it's the employees, partners, it's their scripts, their story to tell. And I was really more of a facilitator to simply guide, influence, create the opportunities, and so forth. And the firm is same with EP&I. Others are very horizontally organized, meaning, I may have majority ownership or be board chairman or elements like that. I'm probably the person that speaks the least and influences the day-to-day operations the least, but may just talk about higher dreams, higher values, higher opportunities, and so forth. It's really the team that creates the beauty of the work product. And I'm just simply there to observe and guide and enhance. And that's allowed people to really blossom and grow and help make longevity. A lot of employees have been here many years, and Epney's been a 10-year structure and other projects been involved with because it's really their show, and I'm strictly a guide to give them that chance for them to succeed. So that was almost an immediate instinct, and it's probably because of my shortcomings. This is probably why I look at it this way and drive it in this direction.
I was going to ask where you think that comes from. And it's interesting to hear you talk about your self awareness around certainly what you were capable of doing, but probably more importantly, what those shortcomings, to use your language, really were.
Well, it's a lot. I'm instinctively a private person who was very shy. So getting out in the public was like Herculean efforts. To do it in front of audiences, it's like I was a very shy, quiet person, and in my youth, so stuff like this would just terrorize me and the perception of people on it. So I needed an associate, a friend, someone to stand up there with me to sort of carry the burden of the presentation, or carry the burden of the public outreach, or carry the burden of connecting with people and sort of the doubt you have and the lack of knowledge of working through all these various aspects of business. So having that gave a great degree of confidence to me because I wasn't the only one shouldering the burden or making the mistakes or sorting through the decisions. I had others to say, well, what's your thought? What do you think? What do you see that I don't see? Can you stand up and make a presentation with it? You can do these various functions to guide me. And that's been most helpful to me. So in some ways, it's a little bit of a selfish move to help get me out there. And obviously, I think the others appreciate it too because they probably perceive they're helping me to get out there and grow. And that's sort of what I call the seed and genesis of the nature of how I sort of work with people and how the businesses have operated.
As you were looking for partners in those early days, partners and then eventually employees, aside from the skills that complemented what you brought to the table, what were you looking for specifically? What was most important to you?
They're all friends. They're all people I know because the one thing I've learned in partnerships and people that their loyalty, honesty, consistency is above talent and abilities because those traits they're installed by their upbringing, my life, or whatever, and it's hard for someone to create them or instruct them on those. So you sort of hope that they have those elements within them because there will be enough trials and tribulations and disaster that to work through that you pray that they have those qualities because they'll help carry through everything else. And so that was sort of really the key piece of looking at. So even people have had issues in their background, criminal backgrounds, things like that, I looked past because it was the person that I focused on, not the mistakes or back history that may have occurred. Because a lot of people say, I don't want to deal with that. This is what I want. They looked at the resume, the background, where I was saying, I looked at more what I call the emotional qualities and measured those. And even despite historical issues, and that's a little bit where my decisions came on and going forward with these various projects, partnerships, employees, and so forth.
Loyalty, honesty, and consistency. I love those. How did you assess for those, Dean? How did you determine? I mean, I heard outside of the friend bubble where you've got this history, I'd imagine it's a quality you still bring through to today. So give us some advice. How do we assess for some of these kind of more less technical skills or technical
So
mindsets?
here's what's interesting, and this is going to be an issue. It's spending time with the person. There's nothing more important than spending time and having the conversation and getting to know them. What's tougher in today's society, as you know, a lot more stuff is done via AI or Zoom or other processes that portion gets shortchanged. And then, what they call multiple chain interviews and all that functioning, I think, unfortunately diminishes that connectivity and knowledge a little bit. So the thought is time is the most essential learning that you can have of a person and his background and qualities as you work with them. Because you just start to know their idiosyncrasies, their issues, their foibles, all that stuff. Everyone's gracious in the first half hour and polite. It's great. I mean, it is. But after you get past that point, they get restless or irritable or hungry or whatever else. And then you get to sort of know who they are and what their qualities and so forth. So I would say it's just time with a person is probably the biggest measuring stick you can use to ascertain if they're right for you.
One of the things I know that you've really sort of built your brand around is this commitment to impact, and specifically a commitment to community impact. And I'd be interested to hear from you. In your view, what are leaders most often challenged by or maybe getting tripped up by when it comes to community engagement and shared ownership?
That is what I call fear of community. Unfortunately, a lot of people have seen bad situations where public meetings turn ugly, words get strong, conversation gets very intense. And so a lot of leaders are pulling out of that realm because of that. And then sometimes those effects get exaggerated and exacerbated by social media that makes it even worse. The trick is once you know the people, individual of community, you realize they're no different than you. And that's probably the one thing in working with all these various cultural groups that they have the same aspirations, dreams, desires, even though their faith or religions may be different. Their aspirations and their love of family and faith and community, marriage, children, all those are mirror your life exactly, precisely in the same thing. And once you realize that, you start knowing that they're the same as you. Yes, their cultural background may be different, their history may be different, but their desires of community, economic success, family, marriage, children, all that are exactly the same. So when you start understanding the groups like that, then you start realizing there are differences. The advice of the leaders is they're you. They just come in different backgrounds, in colors, history, culture, but they're really you with the same wishes, desires, hope for the future, beliefs. And basically the idea is that when you look at that lens and you realize I'm just helping someone else, like I wish to be helped to succeed in society and succeed in business and build upon it. And that's really probably the advice I would give, that once you know those people within the community, you're sort of knowing yourself because they're sort of a mirror image of who you are and what you're thinking about. So once you get past sort of the facade of what I call the public meetings and the discourse and all that and start knowing the individuals, your perception changes dramatically and your idea of who they are changes very much. And when you start to know wives and families, you just say, it's me, just with a different background.
And that framing is so powerful. When you think about building systems that endure beyond any one individual, what do you believe leaders most need to be paying attention to?
To teach them everything you know. The biggest tragedy in business is if you retire and everything's still in your head, because it does absolutely no good for anyone. You've just wasted a mind, period. You yourself, so you took it back and went away. So the idea is that you want to expose all of yourself, good or bad, and all your thinking and logic and history and knowledge, and train others so they pick up on it. That you're not trying to keep secret or show it, the idea of using your knowledge as power over people, but you want to use knowledge to educate and lift people. And that's a very different thinking, but I think absolutely necessary because when you give that to others, then the legacy of what's good about you and what's helpful and positive continues on because it's embedded in other people and this philosophy, wishes, and drive and knowledge gets expressed and occur. And that's really critical. That's why I'm involved in all these different groups to try to get that out as fast as I can before my time is up. Because, the prayer I have is that when I'm all said and done, my mind's an empty vessel and everything that's here has been given out and gone, and others can use it to see fit on their successes and their desires.
In what ways have you benefited or been a recipient of that knowledge transfer from others throughout your career?
Tremendous. There's stuff I would have never known without their guidance and help and influence because learning areas outside of architecture, if it wasn't for all these connections, I would have been an architect strictly. But learning all these aspects beyond it has diversified my training, my knowledge, my influence, my thoughts tremendously. So you look at other professions, society, how people work, very different than if I stayed in a very strict definition of my profession, and really has led to a lot of revelations about people work, society works, opportunities out there, and issues that go beyond the narrow scope of your profession. So I think in the end, I've been a lot more effective at what I can do due to the help of other people educating me and sharing their thoughts, ideas. And it's a whole range from not just technical, but religious, family, all these aspects and philosophy that have been a great influence and help on me personally.
It's really neat. I get this image of sort of this paying it forward in a way. I mean, thinking about the knowledge that's been transferred to you and is now going to spiderweb out into transferring to, an innumerable amount of individuals that will then hopefully continue the transfer.
Well, if you can elevate, paying it forward, I just call and it's simple. It's just sharing with others so that all may succeed. Then you elevate everyone around you, and if they surpass you, great. But the idea is that you have what I call, they talk about income disparity. That's one aspect, but you want to make sure there's not an intelligence disparity or a social disparity because those are just as important. And unfortunately, today's society is starting to create more disparities in just income. And it's incumbent on all of us to share on all those aspects of knowledge, ability, connections, thoughts. It's critical because it's so focused on the dollars and how to distribute dollars, but they forget about all the other aspects that are even more impactful, especially over a long term. So it has to be, like I say, in a broad-based social network, not just financial philosophy that's critical to really advance. So it's not, that's why I appreciate the term paying it forward, but I hate the term because it narrows it to a financial transaction. I'm
Sure.
paying it forward, where I said socially advance, socially develop, share all these aspects. So I think that's what's really important. And it's not just a one-dimensional situation, but multiple dimensions across a lot of different areas of humankind.
That is so good. I don't know why, but I've never connected the paying it forward with the financial piece of it so specifically. But I love your emphasis on broadening that. And I know we've covered a lot of ground here today, but I think it's a great segue into sort of a final question for you, Dean, around if listeners here wanted to broaden their impact and were to take just one action as a result of the knowledge transfer that's happening as a result of this conversation, what change would you most hope to see come from that action?
You may start near and dear where you have comfort. It may begin with sharing with your children. and sharing with your wife and other close people, and then grow from there. It's sort of, expecting someone to come from a life that stays very isolated, close, and suddenly jump into society may be this huge leap that's difficult. But if you can start mentally with people that are close to you, that you trust, and then slowly build the concentric circles around that, then I think you start getting into that realm and start getting into that ability of influencing a greater and greater realm. So start close to you, start with people you trust, start with relationships you're comfortable with, and then keep building on it and reaching incremental steps over time, become a mile of progress. And that really has a great influence on what occurs. So that would be where I'd begin, where I'd advise people to begin, and then just build on it. When you look behind you, you realize, my God, my influence is far and wide because of all these small steps that it took over a period of time.
Near and dear to far and wide. I love that.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much for your time here today, Dean. I am sure the listeners have a lot to chew on as a result of this conversation, and I just appreciate the generosity you brought into our conversation today.
Well, as I said, Kaylee, thank you for the opportunity to hear me. I appreciate the invitation. I've enjoyed this very much, so thank you.
It was wonderful. And thank you to the listeners out there listening in. We'll see you next time on Leadership Matters. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Leadership Matters. If today's episode resonated with you, would you do me a favor and share it with someone you care about? To learn more about the work the Bailey Group is doing in the world, check us out at thebaileygroup.com or follow us over on LinkedIn. We love sharing useful articles, helpful resources, and valuable tools to help you expand your leadership capacity. Like and subscribe, and join us next time for more honest conversations.